tools that we can use in our classroom to evaluate primary and secondary sources. Great tools that were actually developed by the Colorado Department of Education that we begged, borrowed, and stole from, and then made some minor changes to. And so we're grateful to our friends for developing those resources. We've made some minor tweaks to them and given you those to take a look at. You're getting, those resources are being made available to you in Word so that you can take them and modify them to your own curriculum, and they're also being given to you in PDF. I wanted to use a piece of curriculum that's not inside of Benchmark or Wonders and offer opportunity for you guys to do that. And so in keeping with kind of our local history, I went with Sylvia Mendez. And I don't like to read to people a whole lot, but in this particular instance, I am going to read this one time as we kind of go through this. Sylvia Mendez, off of Britannica for Kids. In 1944, Sylvia Mendez, Mexican-American family, had recently moved. She and her siblings were not allowed to go to public school close to the farm and were instead told they had to attend the Mexican school, which was further away and fewer resources. Sylvia's father found other families willing to join him, suing the school district, whose only reason had been, "That is how it is done." During the trial, Sylvia and her family listened to terrible statements in which school district officials blatantly claimed that Mexican children were not as smart as white children. The Mendez family won their case in 1946. The judge said it was wrong to separate Hispanic students because of race. Another judge agreed and made all schools stop separating students in all California public schools. This ruling helped win the the Board of Education versus Topeka, Kansas case, that stopped all public schools in the United States from separating students because of their race. We'll take a look at this article now, and then so I would hand this out to my students so they're looking at their primary source analysis sheet. We look at the, are there any special markings on the document question? I would X that out, and I would tell our kids we're not even going to worry about that because what we're dealing with here is a secondary source, and so we won't see any of those. What we see is we'll be looking at something a little bit different, so we're not even going to worry about that. But then we come down here, and is the document handwritten, typed, or printed? And then we know that this document is typed, and then because it came, and because it's very nice and very easy to read, right? And so then we kind of move in, and then what is the date of the document? And so, you know, kids may pick up on that there was some dates in there, 1944 and 1946, and they may be savvy enough, depending on how much work you've done with them, to notice that it says that this article was written in 2015 from the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So we know that this is a relatively new article, that it came out in 2015. I'm going to tackle these next two questions: who wrote the document, who received the document, and I put an X through how is this document important to our history, because we're going to come back to that. To me, it's the most important question that we're going to talk about today. And so I want to tackle the easier questions, and who wrote the document and who received the document. When we take a look at this, we know that it's on Britannica for Kids, and there's this copyright. So somebody from the Cooperative Children's Book Center wrote this, and who did they write it for? And who is getting this information, and where is it? And so we might show our students that this is online, that it's on the Britannica for Kids website. And so that it was really written for kids our age, and for us to have an understanding about what's going on. So then we come into, are there any words that you don't know? And then what I've taken the liberty of doing, or what Princess took the liberty of doing, is highlighting words that might be a little strenuous for our third graders to just necessarily understand, and get into a conversation about what school they go to. Is there a school that's closer? What school their brother goes to? Is that school farther away? You know, and what are resources, and what do those mean? You know, I'm a big MCU guy, and so we had a huge conversation with I might get some parenting maelstrom from this, but I took my kid to see Infinity War, and he was our Endgame, and he didn't understand why Thanos was trying to get rid of half the people in the universe. And so we had a resource conversation where I ate a piece of chocolate and I was like, there's only enough chocolate for me. There's not enough for you. And he very much understood why resources were important and what they were at that particular point in time. Anytime our kids have to share, anytime they're at their groups, that's resources and how we pull them together to share or get them away. Suing gets to be a bit complicated, but when it's very simple. When you've got a disagreement about whose time it is to use whatever toy it is, you take that either to your parents or to your teacher, and they make those decisions like, yeah, okay, it's Johnny's turn, or it's Susie's turn, or actually it's none of your turns, and that can happen. And so when adults can't make those determinations, they go to a judge, and those judges kind of make those determinations as to whether or not Sylvia Mendez should be going to the Mexican school or if she can go to the other school. And so some rich opportunities there for conversations with our kids so that they can develop those tools and those resources. Then we get into what the main idea or the topic of the document. This gets to be exciting because you're going to be soliciting feedback from your kids. You're going to be trying to lead them to water in this particular instance. And what I'm hoping our students understand from this document is that Sylvia Mendez wasn't able to go to school that she wanted to go to initially, but then a judge said that it wasn't fair and that she was able to then go to school. And then that sets up it so that everybody in California can go to the same school. And then eventually everybody in the United States could go to school not based on race. And then we talk about pulling two quotes that support the main idea and the evidence. And with that thought in mind, what I'm hoping my students pull in particular in this document are maybe like the second sentence. She and her siblings were not allowed to go to the public school close to their farm and were instead told they had to go to the Mexican school, which was farther away and had fewer resources. And then maybe the judge said it was wrong to Hispanic students because of, was wrong to separate Hispanic students because of race. What's important about this is it doesn't have to be my two thoughts. And when I talk to my 6-year-old about things and I ask him what his thinking is, oftentimes I'm amazed at what he comes up with just because I would have never thought of that. And I don't have the perspective of a 6-year-old, I'm an old man. And so when I hear that thinking, I'm like, oh, that actually does make sense. I didn't really think of it that way. And so when our students give us answers or quotes or sentences that we necessarily didn't ascribe as one of those two main quotes, let's ask them why, and let's get into some rich conversations with their students around that, while they're willing to share. And then as long as that supports whatever that idea is, it's fine. It's a great example. And so then we come back to this last question. Now that they have a better understanding of what this document is and what this document is about, we talk about how is this document important to our history. We're not talking about the Sylvia Mendez case. We're talking about this article right here. How is it important to our history? And I think that this document is important to our history because now my 3rd graders understand the importance of Brown versus the Board of Education and the importance of Sylvia Mendez's case, Mendez v. Westminster. And now my 3rd graders can engage in an amazing conversation about the importance, the need to not segregate, or the importance of what's going on in their own communities. Because, Orange County is just a hop, skip, and a jump, as a quick freeway ride away from a lot of them. Really just right down the road that we've got this rich history that's taking place and really kind of changing what happens in America. And so this is a huge deal because now my 3rd graders can engage with this. And I think that that's why this document is important. What questions do they have about the document? I mean, we've talked about this to death. We've done a lot of different things. We've covered a lot of different things. They might want to know what happened with the Board of Education versus Topeka case. They might want to know why Sylvia Mendez's Mexican family moved. And those are great questions to ask. And the cool thing is there's some rich history in Sylvia Mendez's family moving. Sylvia Mendez's family was actually able to afford a house in Westminster because it was occupied by a Japanese person prior to Executive Order 9044. And then that was the only reason why that house was affordable in that neighborhood for them. And so there's some rich history there that we could get into, some rich history with the Brown versus the Board of Education. There's a lot of different ways that we can go, and they may not have any questions, and that's okay, but there's definitely some jumping off points to some other rich resources.